At my wife's funeral, I was standing by the coffin, clutching her favorite cross, when I heard my daughter-in-law Emma whisper, "This day is like a holiday." Her bright red dress cut through the sea of black. My son Oliver giggled, as if they were already sharing the inheritance. But when the lawyer invited us to read the will, Emma screamed and ran out of his office in tears. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The rain fell in heavy sheets, drumming against the black umbrellas that bobbed like mourners' heads around my wife's coffin. I stood at the edge of the grave, clutching Alice's favorite cross, its worn silver edges biting into my palm. The air smelled of wet earth and regret. Portland Cemetery was a sea of black coats and bowed heads, but my eyes kept drifting to the splash of red slicing through the crowd. Emma, my daughter-in-law, strutted in a silk dress that clung to her like a taunt, her heels clicking on the cobblestone path. She leaned close to my son, Oliver, her lips brushing his ear. "This day is like a holiday," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear, loud enough for the nearest guests to stiffen. Oliver's giggle cut sharper than the wind. I didn't move. My fingers tightened around the cross, the cold metal grounding me as the mourners' murmurs faded into the rain's rhythm. Alice was gone, and here they were, already carving up her memory like a feast. Emma's red dress swayed as she tossed her hair, her diamond earrings catching the dim light. She didn't belong here, not in this sacred space where I'd last held Alice's hand, promising her I'd keep the family together. I'd failed her already. "James, I'm so sorry," a guest muttered, squeezing my arm. I nodded, my throat too tight to reply. The priest's voice droned on, words about peace and eternal rest, but they felt hollow. My gaze flicked to Emma again. She was whispering to Oliver, her hand on his arm, her smile sharp as a blade. He adjusted his tie, avoiding my eyes, his nervous laugh echoing in my chest. The guests noticed. An older woman, Alice's friend from church, gasped softly. "What does she think this is?" she hissed to her husband. I wanted to scream the same. The service ended, and the crowd began to disperse, umbrellas tilting against the wind. Emma and Oliver lingered by the path, her red dress a beacon of defiance. She caught my eye and smirked, as if I were already irrelevant, a ghost at my own wife's funeral. My jaw clenched, but I stayed silent, my dignity the only shield I had left. The cross in my hand felt heavier, Alice's voice echoing in my mind, "Don't let them break you, James." I hadn't listened then. I was listening now. As the last guests drifted away, the rain slowed to a drizzle, leaving the cemetery quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. I stood alone by the grave, the fresh earth dark and uneven. Emma and Oliver were gone, probably already planning how to spend money they hadn't yet claimed. I traced the cross with my thumb, its familiar grooves a map of Alice's faith, her love. They thought they'd won. They thought I was just an old man, too broken to fight. I slipped the cross into my pocket, its weight a promise. My other hand reached for my phone, fingers brushing the cold screen. I didn't know who I'd call yet, but the need to act burned in my chest, steady and unyielding. "They're wrong," I whispered to the grave, my voice low but firm. The drizzle stopped, and a faint ray of light broke through the clouds, catching the wet grass. I turned from the grave, my steps deliberate, the phone still in my hand. This wasn't over. The rain tapped against the windows of my small Portland house, a steady pulse that matched the ache in my chest. I sat in the dark, the only light coming from the flickering street lamp outside. On the coffee table, a photo of Alice and Oliver stared back at me, its edges yellowed from time. Oliver was 6 in that picture, his grin wide as he clung to his mother's hand. Now, he couldn't even look me in the eye. I set the photo down and ran my fingers over the worn armrest of the couch, the fabric smelling faintly of Alice's lavender perfume. The house felt too quiet without her. My mind drifted to the past, to the years I'd given everything for Oliver. I'd been an engineer once, with dreams of bridges and blueprints. But when Oliver was born, those dreams took a back seat. 2 jobs, factory shifts by day, janitor work by night, paid for his private school, his college. I remembered the day I sold our old family home, the one Alice loved, to fund his wedding to Emma. The realtor had handed me the check, and I'd felt a piece of myself slip away with it. "It's for Oliver," Alice had said, squeezing my hand. I'd believed her. The memory shifted. Emma's voice, sharp and mocking, cut through a dinner 3 years ago. "This house is so quaint, James. Don't you ever want more?" She'd smirked, swirling her wine, while Oliver stared at his plate. I'd laughed it off, but Alice hadn't. Later, in our bedroom, she'd warned me. "Emma's not who you think, James. She'll take everything if you let her." I hadn't listened. I'd wanted to believe Oliver would see through her, would come back to us. Instead, he'd drifted further, his calls growing rare, his visits colder. I stood, my knees stiff, and crossed to the bookshelf. The rain grew louder, a dull roar against the roof. My fingers found Alice's leather-bound notebook, its pages brittle under my touch. She'd kept it by her bedside, jotting down thoughts, prayers. I opened it, the scent of old paper grounding me. A single word caught my eye, written in her careful script: justice. My breath hitched. Alice had known. She'd seen Emma's greed, Oliver's weakness, and she'd left me this, a guide, a spark. The notebook trembled in my hands as I sank back onto the couch. Every sacrifice I'd made, every late night, every missed chance, had been for Oliver, and he'd thrown it back in my face. Emma's whisper at the funeral echoed in my mind: "This day is like a holiday." My grip tightened, the notebook's edges digging into my palms. They'd mistaken my kindness for weakness, my silence for surrender. They were wrong. I stood again, restless, and stepped onto the porch. The rain had softened, mist curling in the air. The notebook was still in my hand, its weight a reminder of Alice's wisdom. "You left me a path," I murmured, my voice steady. Across the street, the neon sign of a small cafe glowed through the haze. I'd been there with Alice countless times, planning our future over coffee. Now, it felt like the place to start again. I tucked the notebook under my arm and glanced at the city lights in the distance. The plan was forming, though I didn't know its shape yet. But I would find a way. I had to. The missile-coated Portland streets in a fine sheen as I walked to Lisa Wilson's office downtown. The air was sharp, smelling of wet pavement and coffee from a nearby cart. My shoes scuffed against the sidewalk, each step heavier than the last. Yesterday's rain had mirrored my grief, today's mist felt like a shift, a clearing. Alice's notebook was tucked inside my coat, its presence a quiet anchor. I didn't know what I'd say to Lisa, but I knew I couldn't stay still any longer. Lisa's office was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building, the kind that creaked with character. I pushed open the door, a bell jingling above me. The room smelled of paper and faint jasmine from a vase of flowers on her desk. Lisa stood, her glasses slipping down her nose as she offered a warm smile. "James," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I'm glad you came." She gestured to a chair, and I sat, my hands clasped tightly. The notebook pressed against my chest. "I heard her, Lisa," I said, my voice low. "Emma, at the funeral. She called it a holiday." The words tasted bitter. Lisa's smile faded, her eyes narrowing. "I heard about the dress," she said, leaning back. "Classy, as always." Her sarcasm was gentle, but it fueled me. I told her about Oliver's laugh, Emma's smirk, the way they'd turned Alice's death into a celebration. Lisa listened, her fingers tapping the desk, her face a mix of empathy and something sharper, resolve, maybe. "Alice knew they'd do this," Lisa said, her tone careful. She adjusted her glasses, glancing at a folder on her desk. "She planned for it." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" I asked, leaning forward. Lisa hesitated, then met my eyes. The will. She made sure it would surprise them. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't push. Not yet. But the spark in her words lit something in me. Alice had seen their greed, and she'd trusted Lisa to help me fight it. I want to do more, I said, my voice harder now. They need to learn what they've done. Lisa nodded, a slow, knowing smile spreading. Then let's start, she said, pulling a notepad closer. We talked for an hour, about the will, about Emma and Oliver's habits, about what I could do. I left her office lighter, the mizzle outside feeling less like a weight and more like a promise. Later, in a corner cafe, I sat with a black coffee and my phone. The espresso machine hissed, and the window beside me streaked with mist. I opened Emma's social media, her posts a gallery of excess, a new designer bag, a champagne-soaked party, a selfie in front of their mansion. Oliver tagged along in her photos, his smile forced. My finger hovered over the screen, my jaw tight. They were spending money they didn't have, assuming Alice's estate was already theirs. I jotted a note in Alice's notebook, the pen scratched loud in my ears, their address. Tomorrow. I dialed an old friend, someone who owed me a favor. Hey, it's James, I said when he answered. I need information. Can we talk? He agreed, no questions asked. I hung up, my eyes drifting to the city beyond the window. The mizzle had stopped, and the clouds parted just enough to let a sliver of sunlight through. I wrote one more line in the notebook, they don't know who they're dealing with. The plan was taking shape, and I was ready to move. The mizzle hung over Portland like a veil, softening the edges of the city as I parked my old sedan a block from Emma and Oliver's mansion. It was April now, a week since my talk with Lisa, and the air carried the faint bite of spring. I adjusted my coat, Alice's notebook tucked inside, and walked toward their gated estate. The iron fence gleamed, but the grass along the path was patchy, neglected. I'd told them I was coming to talk family matters, but my real purpose was sharper, to see their cracks, to find the weak spots in their polished facade. The mansion loomed, all glass and marble, a monument to excess. I rang the bell, and the door swung open to reveal Emma, her lips pursed in a half-smile. James, she said, her tone clipped, as if my name was an inconvenience. Her designer dress hugged her frame, a new leather bag slung over her shoulder, its gold clasp glinting. Oliver hovered behind her, fidgeting with his cufflinks, his eyes darting to the floor. Dad, he mumbled, barely audible. I nodded, stepping inside, my shoes sinking into the plush rug. The foyer was a shrine to their ambition, a crystal chandelier, a spiral staircase, a vase with a hairline crack marring its porcelain surface. On a side table, I glimpsed a stack of envelopes, one stamped with a bank's red logo. Unpaid bills, maybe. Emma gestured to the living room, her heels clicking on the marble. Coffee, she offered, but her eyes said she'd rather I leave. I sat on a stiff leather couch, the room smelling of her perfume and something sour, like spilled wine left too long. So, what's this about? Emma asked, perching on an armchair, her bag beside her like a trophy. You've been quiet since the funeral. Her voice dripped with false concern, but her gaze was cold, assessing. Oliver sank into a chair, his hands twitching. I leaned back, letting my shoulders slump, playing the tired old man they expected. Just wanted to see how you're holding up, I said, my voice soft. Alice would have wanted us to stay close. Emma's laugh was sharp, a blade slicing the air. Oh, James, you're so old-fashioned. Family's fine, but we've got bigger plans. She waved a hand, her bracelet jangling. This house, our lifestyle, it takes work. You wouldn't understand. Oliver flinched, his fingers brushing a coffee stain on the table. I caught the tremor in his hand, the way he avoided her glance. Work? I said, tilting my head. Must be tough, keeping all this going. She smirked, missing the edge in my voice. It's an investment. Oliver's got deals in the works. She nudged him, and he nodded, too quick, too eager. Yeah, Dad, it's fine, he said, but his voice cracked. I let the silence stretch, my eyes scanning the room. Another envelope peeked from under a magazine, this one marked urgent. Their world was fraying, and they thought I was too broken to notice. Alice always said you were ambitious, I said, my tone neutral. Emma's smile tightened. She was sweet, but she didn't get it. You too, with your little house, your simple life. She spat the word like a curse. We're building something real. Oliver shifted, his knuckles white. I nodded, as if agreeing, but my mind catalogued every detail, Emma's arrogance, Oliver's fear, the cracks in their empire. I stood, smoothing my coat. I won't keep you, I said. Just wanted to check in. Emma's relief was palpable, but her parting shot stung. Don't worry, James. We'll take care of everything. Her eyes flicked to Oliver, a silent command. He muttered a goodbye, still not meeting my gaze. I left, the muzzle cool on my face, their voices fading behind the heavy door. Back home, the familiar creak of my floorboards welcomed me. I sat at the kitchen table, the scent of old wood grounding me. Alice's notebook lay open, its pages a canvas for my plan. I wrote, Oliver's debts. Their weakness. Emma's pride would blind her, but Oliver's fear was the key. I reached for a plain white envelope, my fingers steady. Whatever I'd send, it would be the first stone in their collapse. I sealed the envelope, my pulse calm but alive. Outside, the mizzle thickened, and I slipped the envelope into my pocket, already thinking of the mailbox down the street. Tomorrow, they'd feel the first tremor. The mailbox clanged shut, swallowing the plain white envelope I'd slipped inside. My breath fogged in the cool April air, the Portland street quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. I'd sent the letter anonymously, a tip to Oliver's creditors about his assets, enough to stir the hornet's nest. My fingers brushed Alice's notebook in my pocket, its weight a reminder of the path I'd chosen. I turned back to my car, the muzzle replaced by a faint evening glow, and felt the first pulse of control. 2 nights later, I stood outside Emma and Oliver's mansion, the bass of music vibrating through the iron gate. Emma had invited me to her latest party, probably to gloat. I adjusted my coat, letting my shoulders sag, and rang the bell. The door opened to a blast of light and laughter, a maid ushering me into a sea of glittering dresses and clinking glasses. The air reeked of perfume and money. Emma swept toward me, her sequined gown catching the chandelier's glow. James. You made it, she chirped, her smile as false as the diamonds around her neck. Oliver trailed behind, his suit too tight, his eyes bloodshot. Wouldn't miss it, I said, my voice heavy, playing the grieving widower. Emma's gaze flicked over me, dismissive. Well, mingle. We're celebrating. She spun away, her laughter sharp as she greeted a cluster of guests. I moved through the crowd, the rug stained with a splash of red wine, unnoticed in the chaos. Faces blurred, wealthy friends, social climbers, all orbiting Emma's radiance. But I saw her glance at Oliver, a flicker of unease in her eyes when a guest whispered about financial rumors. I sipped a glass of water, leaning against a pillar, my ears catching fragments of talk. Oliver's deals, risky, one man muttered. I filed it away, my gaze on Emma as she tossed her hair, deflecting questions with a laugh. Oliver was worse, his smile brittle as he poured whiskey. When a guest asked about his latest venture, he stammered, "It's under control." I knew better. My letter had done its work. I drifted toward Emma, catching her mid-conversation. Alice would have loved this, I said, my tone soft but deliberate. She was so careful with her plans, especially the will. Emma froze, her glass halfway to her lips. The will, she echoed, her voice tight. I shrugged, feigning innocence. She thought of everything. You know how she was. Her eyes narrowed, but before she could press, Oliver's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his face paling, and excused himself, hurrying to a side room. The creditors were closing in. Emma recovered, her laugh forced. "We're fine, James. Don't worry your head." But her fingers gripped her glass too tightly, the knuckles white. I nodded, retreating to the edge of the room, my heart steady. The party swirled on, but I'd planted a seed. Oliver didn't return, and Emma's smiles grew sharper, her glances darting to the door he'd vanished through. I left before midnight, the night air cool against my face. In my car, the old sedan seats creaked as I checked my phone. A message from Lisa glowed on the screen, "Next step ready. Call me." I smiled, the darkness of the car wrapping around me like a cloak. The engine hummed to life, the road stretching toward home. "This is just the beginning," I murmured, my hands firm on the wheel. The city lights blurred past, each one a step closer to their reckoning. The rain returned, hammering my roof as I sat in my Portland living room, the photo of Alice on the shelf watching over me. It was late April, and the air smelled of damp wood and memory. A sharp knock jolted me upright. I slipped my hand into my pocket, clicking on the small dictaphone hidden there, its faint hum a secret between me and Alice's plan. I opened the door to find Emma and Oliver, their faces taut with anger and desperation. Emma's coat was soaked, her bracelet glinting under the porch light. Oliver's hair stuck to his forehead, his eyes hollow. "James, we need to talk," Emma snapped, pushing past me without invitation. Oliver followed, muttering, "Dad, please." I closed the door, the floorboards creaking under my steps. "What's this about?" I asked, my voice calm, though my pulse raced. The dictaphone recorded silently, capturing every word. Emma spun to face me, her eyes blazing. "You've done something, haven't you? The creditors, they're circling like vultures." Her voice cracked, her hands slicing the air. "You're trying to ruin us." I raised an eyebrow, feigning confusion. "Ruin you? Emma, I'm just an old man grieving his wife." She scoffed, stepping closer. "Don't play dumb, James. You're a pathetic has-been, meddling where you don't belong." Oliver grabbed her arm, his voice low. Stop." But she shook him off, her bracelet clattering. "No, he needs to hear it. We're drowning, and he's gloating." I leaned against the wall, my face a mask of fatigue, but inside, I was steel. "Drowning?" I said softly. "Sounds like you spent too much you didn't have." Oliver flinched, his hands trembling. "Dad, we just need help. Alone, maybe. To fix things." I tilted my head, letting the silence stretch. "Alice handled our finances," I said, my tone deliberate. "She decided everything. You know that." Emma's laugh was bitter. "Oh, please. Her precious will. We'll fight it in court if we have to." Her threat hung in the air, but I didn't blink. "Do what you must," I said, my voice cold. But Alice was thorough. Oliver's shoulders sagged, his eyes darting to Emma, pleading for her to stop. She didn't. "You're nothing, James. A sad old man in a sad little house." Her words were venom, but I let them slide off me, the dictaphone drinking them in. "Maybe," I said, shrugging. "But I'm not the one begging." Emma's face twisted, and she stormed out, the door slamming behind her. Oliver lingered, his mouth opening, then closing. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and followed her into the rain. I exhaled, clicking off the dictaphone. The house was quiet again, the photo of Alice steady in its frame. I called Lisa, her voice crisp through the phone. "Got something good?" she asked. "Better than good," I said, glancing at the dictaphone. "Her threats, their leverage." Lisa chuckled. "Send it to me. We'll use it." I hung up, sitting at the kitchen table, the scent of coffee lingering from morning. I played the recording, Emma's voice shrill and unguarded. Each word was a brick in the wall I was building. I opened Alice's notebook, its pages soft under my fingers, and wrote, "Her anger will break her." The dictaphone went into a drawer, its click a promise. I pulled Lisa's business card from my wallet, tracing its edges. Outside, the rain slowed, and I knew the next move was close. They were unraveling, and I was just getting started. The mizzle draped Portland in a soft haze, blurring the edges of the cafe where I met Lisa. It was mid-April, and the air smelled of espresso and damp leaves. I pushed open the door, the bell jingling as I stepped inside. The wooden tables gleamed under warm lights, and Lisa sat in a corner booth, her glasses fogged from the steam of her latte. She waved me over, a stack of papers neatly aligned beside her. I slid into the seat, Alice's notebook heavy in my coat pocket, its leather cover worn smooth from my touch. "James, you look like a man with a plan," Lisa said, her voice teasing but sharp. She pushed a folder toward me. "Alice's idea, redirect most of your assets to her charity fund. It's legal, airtight, and it'll gut whatever Emma and Oliver expect." I nodded, my fingers tracing the folder's edge. The idea was clever, but I wanted more. "We need leverage," I said, leaning forward. "Something to break them. I'm thinking a private investigator. Dig into Emma's life." Lisa's eyebrows rose, but her smile was approving. "You're playing hardball now. I like it." She jotted a name on her notepad, her pen scratching softly. "I know a guy. Discreet, thorough. What are we looking for?" I leaned back, the hum of the cafe grounding me. "Anything. Secrets, accounts, lies. Emma's too cocky to cover her tracks well." Lisa chuckled, tapping her pen. "Greed makes people sloppy. Alice knew that." We spent an hour hashing out details, legal maneuvers, timelines, the fund setup. Lisa's sarcasm peppered the conversation, her disdain for Emma clear. "She's strutting around like she's won the lottery," she said, sipping her latte. "Bet she's already spent the inheritance in her head." I smiled faintly, picturing Emma's red dress at the funeral. "She'll learn," I said, my voice low. Lisa nodded, sliding me a contract. "Sign here. We're locking this down." Later, I sat alone at the table, Lisa's papers tucked away. My phone buzzed, the screen cracked but glowing. "Crow," a gruff voice said when I answered. "The investigator. Got something already. Emma's got a secret account, offshore. She's siphoning money from Oliver, hiding it. Want me to keep digging?" My pulse quickened, a cold thrill settling in my chest. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "Everything you can find." I hung up, the cafe's chatter fading as I stared at the rain-streaked window. Emma's betrayal of Oliver was a gift, a crack in their united front. I opened Alice's notebook, its pages soft under my fingers, and wrote, "Her secret account." The wedge. The plan was taking shape, each piece slotting into place like the blueprints I'd once drawn as an engineer. I sipped my coffee, the bitter taste sharp on my tongue. Outside, the mizzle thickened, cloaking the city in secrecy. I slipped the phone into my pocket, its weight a promise of the next move. "They haven't seen what I'm capable of," I murmured, grabbing the cafe receipt and standing. The door jingled as I stepped into the mist, my steps sure, my mind already racing ahead. The evening sky was clear, a rare break in Portland's spring gloom, as I parked my sedan down the street from the upscale restaurant where Emma and Oliver were dining. It was late April, and the city hummed with life. I'd sent the package earlier that day, a plain envelope stuffed with bank statements from Emma's secret account, courtesy of the investigator. Addressed to Oliver, anonymous. Now, I leaned against a lamppost, the glow of the restaurant's glass walls spilling onto the sidewalk. Alice's notebook rested in my pocket, a silent partner in this unraveling. Inside, Emma held court at a long table, her green dress shimmering under the chandeliers. Oliver sat beside her, his tie loosened, his smile strained. Their friends laughed, glasses clinking, but I saw the tension in Emma's shoulders, the way Oliver's hand hovered over his phone. I waited, my breath steady, the air cool against my face. The restaurant's hum drifted out, cutlery, chatter, a faint jazz melody. Then it happened. Oliver glanced at his phone, his face draining of color. He stood, chair scraping, and slammed the device on the table. "You've been lying." His voice cut through the din, heads turning. Emma froze, her fork mid-air. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, but her eyes darted to the guests. Oliver thrust the phone at her, his hands shaking. "This account. You're stealing from me." The table fell silent, a woman gasping softly. Emma laughed, shrill and forced. "Don't be ridiculous, Oliver. You're embarrassing us." But her voice cracked, and the guests leaned away, whispering. Oliver didn't stop. "You think I'm weak? You think you can just—" He grabbed a glass, slamming it down, shards scattering. Emma stood, her face flushed. "You're pathetic," she hissed, loud enough for the room to hear. "You've ruined everything." The words echoed, her composure shattering like the glass. A waiter hovered, unsure, as a guest muttered, "This is a mess." Emma's eyes scanned the room, landing on the window where I stood, too far to be seen but close enough to feel her panic. She suspected me, I knew, but suspicion wasn't proof. I turned away, the scene burned into my mind. Their world was crumbling, and I'd lit the fuse. My phone buzzed as I reached my car, Emma's name flashing. I answered, her voice a venomous hiss. "You're behind this, aren't you? You'll pay, James." I let her rage, then said, "Good night, Emma," and hung up. The night was quiet now, the restaurant's glow fading behind me. I sat in the car, the leather seat cold, and opened Alice's notebook. My pen scratched, her mask is off. One more push. The engine purred to life, the city lights streaking past as I drove. Emma's scream, Oliver's betrayal, they were music to me, proof that justice was close. I gripped the notebook, its pages a map of my vengeance. "She did this to herself," I murmured, the road stretching into the dark. The next step was already forming, and I knew where it would lead. I turned toward home, the notebook warm against my chest, ready for what came next. The sun broke through May's clouds, casting long shadows across the park opposite Emma and Oliver's mansion. I sat on a bench, the grass damp under my shoes, watching as a tow truck hauled away Oliver's sleek black car. Another vehicle followed, loaded with furniture from their estate, creditors at work, spurred by my anonymous tips. The air smelled of fresh earth and justice. Alice's notebook lay in my lap, its open page marked with a single word, consequences. I traced it with my finger, feeling the weight of every choice that led here. Oliver emerged from the mansion, his suit rumpled, his face gaunt. He argued with a man in a clipboard, his gestures frantic, but the truck rolled away. I stayed still, the park's quiet hum, birds, distant traffic, masking my presence. Oliver's world was shrinking, and I'd made it happen. The sun warmed my face, a stark contrast to the chill in my chest. I'd loved him once, sacrificed everything. Now, I watched him break, and felt only resolve. That evening, my doorbell rang, the sound sharp in my small Portland house. I opened the door to Oliver, his eyes red, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Dad," he croaked, stepping inside without asking. The room smelled of coffee and old wood, Alice's photo steady on the shelf. "I need help. They're taking everything." His voice trembled, a boy's plea in a man's body. I gestured to a chair, my face unreadable. "Sit," I said, my tone flat. He collapsed into it, his fingers raking through his hair. "Emma's furious. Says it's my fault. But I can't. I can't fix this. He looked up, desperate. You've got money, Dad. From Mom's estate. Just a loan, please. I leaned against the counter, Alice's notebook in my hand, its weight grounding me. Sell the mansion, I said, my voice cold. Downsize. You don't need all that. His eyes widened, panic flaring. Emma would kill me. That's her dream. I shrugged, turning the notebook in my hands. Then you've got a problem. Alice left a plan, Oliver. Not my call. His face crumpled, his voice barely a whisper. She's destroying me. I didn't flinch, though his words stung, a faint echo of the sun I'd raised. You chose her, I said, and the silence that followed was heavier than the rain ever was. He left, his steps dragging, the door clicking shut. I called Lisa, her voice crisp through the phone. Papers ready? I asked. All set, she said. Just say when. I nodded, though she couldn't see. Soon. Hanging up, I stepped onto the porch, the sunset painting the sky in gold and crimson. A letter from Lisa's office waited in my mailbox, its crisp envelope unmarked but heavy with promise. I held it, the paper cool against my palm, and thought of Alice's cross, her notebook, her justice. They can't escape now, I murmured, tearing the envelope's edge. The sun dipped lower, its light catching the letter's first line, but I didn't read it yet. I stepped back inside, the letter in one hand, the notebook in the other, and felt the final pieces falling into place. The phone on the table gleamed, waiting for my next call. The lawyer's office in downtown Portland was a cold box of mahogany and paper, the kind of place that swallowed sound. It was mid-May 2025, and the sun struggled through thick clouds, casting faint shadows on the carpet. I sat across from Emma and Oliver, my hands folded, Alice's silver cross cool in my pocket. Lisa Wilson, crisp in her blazer, stood at the head of the table, a thick folder open before her. Emma tapped her manicured nails, her emerald necklace glinting with every impatient shift. Oliver slumped, his tie askew, his eyes fixed on the table like a man awaiting sentence. Lisa cleared her throat, her glasses catching the lamplight. We're here to read Alice Crow's will, she began, her voice steady. Emma leaned forward, a smirk playing on her lips, as if the room was already hers. I watched her, my face calm, but inside, my pulse thrummed with anticipation. Alice had planned this, and I'd helped sharpen the blade. Lisa's words came slow, deliberate. The bulk of Alice's estate, her savings, properties, and investments, will fund the Alice Crow Children's Charity. Emma's nails stopped tapping. What? She snapped, her voice slicing the air. Lisa didn't flinch. The charity will support pediatric care in Oregon. It's fully endowed. Emma's face drained of color, her necklace suddenly garish against her pallor. Oliver's head jerked up, his mouth half open. That's everything, he stammered. Lisa nodded, turning a page. To Emma Crow, Alice leaves her antique pocket watch. To Oliver Crow, a collection of first-edition books. Emma stood, her chair scraping. This is a joke. She can't do this. Her voice cracked, raw and desperate. Lisa's eyes flicked to her, cool as stone. It's legal, Mrs. Crow. Alice was meticulous. Emma's hands shook, her necklace swinging as she pointed at me. You did this, didn't you? You twisted her. I met her gaze, my voice low. Alice saw you clearly, Emma. Both of you. Oliver's hands lay limp on his knees, his face a mask of shock. Emma's scream echoed as she stormed out, her heels pounding the floor, the door slamming behind her. The room fell silent, the air heavy with her absence. Oliver looked at me, his eyes wet. Dad, I'm sorry, he whispered. We didn't mean, I cut him off, my tone ice. You meant every word at her funeral. Alice spoke for me today. He flinched, his shoulders caving. Lisa closed the folder, her nod subtle but warm. "We're done here," she said. I stood, the cross in my pocket a steady weight. Oliver didn't move, his apology hanging unanswered. I walked out, the hallway dim, the city's hum faint through the windows. On the street, the clouds parted, a sliver of sunlight warming my face. I pulled Lisa's letter from my coat, its crisp envelope detailing the charity's first steps. Justice tasted clean, like the air after rain. Alice would be proud, I murmured, slipping the letter into my briefcase. My car waited across the street, but I paused, the cross firm in my hand, my eyes on the horizon. Something waited beyond this moment, and I was ready to find it. The cemetery was quiet, the May sun filtering through ancient oaks, dappling the grass around Alice's grave. It was a day after the will reading, and Portland felt softer, the air carrying the scent of earth and blooming lilacs. I knelt by her headstone, tracing her name with my finger. The granite cool under my touch. Alice's silver cross hung from my hand, its chain catching the light. "You did it," I said, my voice low, steady. "You saw them for what they were, and you made it right." I settled on the grass, the cross warm in my palm. Emma's scream in the lawyer's office echoed in my mind, her red dress replaced by a frantic, tear-streaked exit. Oliver's broken apologies followed, his voice a ghost of the boy I'd raised. I felt no pity, only a calm certainty. "They thought they could take everything," I told Alice, the words firm. "But you left them nothing but their own greed." The breeze stirred, rustling the leaves, as if she were listening. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees, and slipped the cross into my pocket. The victory was hers as much as mine, but it had changed me. I wasn't the man who'd stood here months ago, broken by their betrayal. I walked to a cafe nearby, the same one where I'd planned with Lisa. The bell jingled as I entered, the air thick with the hum of a coffee machine and the buttery scent of croissants. Lisa waited at a corner table, her notebook open, a grin spreading as she saw me. "You look lighter," she said, pushing a mug toward me. I sat, the ceramic warm against my hands. "Feels like I've shed a weight," I admitted. She laughed, her glasses slipping down her nose. "Emma and Oliver? They're shedding more than that. Word is, they're selling the mansion to cover debts." I nodded, unsurprised. Alice knew they'd crumble. Lisa leaned back, her pen tapping the table. "She trusted you to finish it. And you did." We talked over coffee, her sarcasm softening into warmth. "The charity's off to a strong start," she said, sliding a report across. "You want in? We could use your head for this." I smiled, the idea sparking something new. "Maybe. I'm thinking of a trip first. Clear my mind." Lisa raised her mug. "To new roads, then." We clinked, the sound sharp and bright. I left the cafe, a folded invitation from Lisa in my pocket, dinner next week, a chance to talk more. The sun was high now, the city alive with color. "Life's got surprises left," I murmured, my steps light. The invitation felt like a promise, a door I hadn't expected to open. I reached my car, the cross a quiet weight against my chest, and glanced at the sky. Whatever came next, I'd face it whole, the man Alice always knew I was. Sunlight poured through my kitchen window, painting the old wooden table in gold. It was late May 2025, and Portland hummed with the promise of summer. I sat with a steaming mug of coffee, its bitter scent mingling with the crisp paper of a letter from the Alice Crow Children's Charity. The envelope bore the fund's crest, a simple dove, and I slid it open, my fingers steady. The words inside hit like a quiet thunder: my donation, Alice's legacy, had saved a pediatric ward from closure. Children would heal because of what we'd done. I leaned back, the chair creaking, and felt a warmth that wasn't just the sun. My revenge hadn't just stripped Emma and Oliver of their greed, it had built something lasting. I pictured Emma's tearful exit from the lawyer's office, Oliver's broken pleas, but they were shadows now, distant and small. The phone rang, Lisa's name flashing. "You read the letter?" she asked, her voice bright. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Feels right." She laughed. "Oh, and your kids? Mansion's gone. Divorce papers filed. They're done." I nodded, unsurprised, but the news stirred no joy, only a calm finality. "They made their choices," I said. Lisa's tone softened. "You made better ones. Park later. We've got fun ideas to toss around." I agreed, hanging up, the coffee mug warm in my hands. The letter lay open, a testament to Alice's vision, and I traced the dove with my thumb, her wisdom still guiding me. Later, I met Lisa in a nearby park, the air alive with children's laughter and the rustle of leaves. We sat on a weathered bench, the paint chipped but sturdy. Lisa's notebook was full of sketches, new projects, clinics, scholarships. "This could be big," she said, her eyes sparking. "You in?" I grinned, the weight of the past months lifting. "Count me in." We laughed, the sound easy. Her hand brushing mine as she pointed to a drawing. Friendship had grown where I hadn't expected it, a gift Alice had left behind. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the grass. I stood, Alice's notebook in my hand, its leather soft from months of planning. Emma and Oliver were gone, their world collapsed, but mine was opening. I thought of a trip, maybe the coast, maybe farther, somewhere to breathe, to dream again. I opened the notebook, my pen hovering, and wrote a single line. The words felt like a vow, but I kept them to myself, a secret for the road ahead. "The world's still waiting," I murmured, tucking the notebook away. The horizon glowed, endless and bright. I walked to my car, the notebook a quiet weight, my steps sure. Whatever lay beyond this moment, new places, new plans, I was ready, free in a way I hadn't been in years. The engine hummed, and I drove toward home, the sun at my back, the future unwritten. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.